Hi, my name is Matthew Deans. I work for the Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services. I'm the Supported Employment and Project Search Coordinator for the state. Today I'll be talking about the transition to independent living and community participation with regards to transition students. Our agency, the Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services, provides a variety of services to students and to support youth with disabilities to help them pursue their independent living through competitive employment in the community once they graduate high school. We have transition services support the students in the movement from school to work and into the community and to adult life. There's a variety of ways that students can access the program. The first, most typical way is to contact the school counselor or their case manager within the school systems to let them know that they're interested in employment and that they would like to pursue services with our agency. The secondary way would be to contact the office directly. Each entity or each school system has a field office with the Department for Aging and Rehab Services that is associated with that school. So you can call the 1-800 number on the slide displayed, and someone can patch you through to the local office based on where you live. You may apply for services with the vocational rehabilitation program if you qualify for services. We are an eligibility-based program, and so we have a variety of different qualifications that you must meet in order for you to receive services from us. Just to glance over these slightly, the first one is that you have to have a physical, mental, or emotional disability of some sort. The disability must present a barrier to employment. And so in some way, the disability keeps you from finding or keeping a job. The third qualification is that you're willing and able to work, and you think our services can help you. And the last one is that you live in the state of Virginia, or that you're going to be moving to Virginia. So, one of the things that we wanted to know is what are the top 3 essential skills that you wish students who had developed before they exited school. I worked as a transition counselor for several years in Chesterfield County. I worked both with an adult caseload and then also with a transition caseload. And that caseload also allowed me to interface with the Project Search program. We won't get into that, but in my experience, I felt that the top 3 essential skills for folks exiting school that I see as a gap was that they had demonstrated work skills. There's a variety of ways to do that. Obviously, getting a job. And when I was growing up, which wasn't too long ago, I graduated high school in 2000. But before I graduated high school, I had already held a job. I had a part-time job working at the local fast food place, Wendy's actually. I had done a variety of things in my neighborhood, babysitting and cutting grass. So when I left school, I had demonstrated work skills that I could refer to employers and provide references. In my experience these days, it seems that that's not as big a priority as it used to be. Folks are exiting school with a diploma, or a special education diploma, but they have delayed the process of getting into the employment world. So we have a variety of things that present barriers to folks with disabilities. The number one, no matter where you go, is transportation. I often joke when I meet people is what's the second question I ask them, what's your name and how do you plan on getting to work? Because it is such a barrier to employment in most areas in Virginia. Whether you have a public transportation system or not, it's still a barrier to folks with disabilities who may need to get additional training on how to access that public transportation system, how to understand the schedule, how to transfer from bus to bus, how that may impact your employment, how you would tell your employer, this is the shift I need to work based on the transportation that I have in place. And obviously, the other option would be to learn how to drive. And another difference in my days I'm seeing nowadays is folks are delaying that process of getting a driver's license. I think I've read a statistic somewhere that the average license issued for young people is at 18 or 19 years old now. I was eager, jumping at the bit to get my license when I turned 16. because that was my ticket out, out into the world, into employment. So as soon as I got a license, I went to work and was able to get to and from on my own. It opened up a lot of doors for myself. But I understand that the folks with disabilities have difficulty learning those skills. It is a challenge. It can create a lot of anxiety and fears for people. But it is something that we've seen very successful programs just providing a little bit of help, a little bit of support through the studying the manual, the driver's manual, and helping them set up accommodations when they do the testing at the DMV site. That's another support that we provide too. It's very easy to do. They're very friendly staff, and they're willing to help folks who would need accommodations in the testing process. And I would say the last would be the self-determination skills. Folks with these types of skills have ownership of their plan. They have an understanding of what their goals are. They need to they know what services they need based on their understanding of themselves and their disability. That's a huge qualification for folks with disabilities. As a person with a disability myself, you may not be able to see the wheelchair, but I do have a mobility impairment since I was 16 years old. I was in a car accident. So I have learned how to communicate to my employers what my needs are and help them understand, and sometimes relieve them in a lot of ways, to let them know that I'm very independent, I'm very mobile. I have a variety of ways of getting around. I have canes and crutches and braces and wheelchairs. So I can get from place to place with a little bit of hard-headedness. But these are, as I said, these are some of the essential skills I think that youth with disabilities exiting the high school and exiting into the work world really would benefit more from. Top 3 tips you have for special educators and they help prepare students for living or participating in the community. I worked with the school systems. Most of the time, we would interface with schools during the IEP meeting, and that was an annual meeting, typically done in the springtime. IEP season is what we called it, and everybody would come around the table, and the team would sit down and go over the IEP. Sometimes they're very long meetings. They can last an hour to 2 hours, depending on how much is gone over. The IEP itself can be 15 or 20 pages long with all the different information that's in there. So I tip for folks is to refer to DARS or our agency as early as possible. There's no too early. I would say when they start to enter high school in their second year or 3 years out from graduation is usually our rule of thumb. But I understand by saying that graduation can be sometimes a moving target for some people. If they're having difficulty passing SOLs, they may stay an extra year, which would then delay that graduation date. So you may think we've got time, and then you get to the end and you realize that we've been working on these SOLs, and now it's time to leave, exit high school, because you may be aging out. And that's when they usually will refer to us. And so folks with significant disabilities do require a great deal of support. And we typically like to start off with diagnostics and assessments. So those take time as well. We have a program here in Virginia called the PERT program. It stands for a post-secondary education rehabilitation transition program. And it's basically a 2-week long-term assessment where folks will go to Woodrow Wilson Rehabilitation Center, which is a training center here in Virginia sponsored by the state, and it's kind of a sister agency to our vocational rehabilitation program. So they work with transition students to help them try to get some sort of experience in their employment interests based on the training programs they have there at Woodrow. So those PERT programs are constant. There are a certain number of slots for each school system, and so if you don't get in the first round, you have to wait till the next round in order to get to Woodrow to do that. Those are crucial assessments, and I think they're very helpful for the team to understand how to prepare someone who's, say, a sophomore or junior exiting high school, and to put curriculum changes in place within the schools, if possible, targeting services with DARS when they're ready to exit, and so that takes time. So second recommendation I would have would be to try to have realistic employment and career focused IPEs. or I think that's a typo. I meant to say IEPs. Um, when I say realistic, I say that with some caution. I'm not the, I never was the type of counselor to say no to someone who had a goal. Um, folks with young folks who have limited interface with the employment world or the experience of employment have a limited understanding of what is available to them. So often people will latch onto their interests based on their experience or their parents' employment and their understanding of what they do. And so when someone is interested in perhaps being a video game designer or tester, which is a common goal because people like to play video games, and they say, well, why not make this a job? And it's a great idea. We would all love to make our interests, our love, our hobbies, our jobs. So there is employment for that. It is competitive. It tends to be gravitating in different parts of the country. So helping people understand when they say they want to do this job, it is a physical job somewhere in the labor market. And our job is to help them understand what to expect when they start to look for those employment options, what the training needs will be, what to expect when they get to work eventually, what the environment will be like, how much education will they need, and ongoing education. Oftentimes in the computer world, they need continuing education to stay on top of the technology. So having the third tip I would say would be to not only refer but also follow up. Often, I remember in the IEP meetings I would be in, the discussions about what services or agencies they would need after high school to live in the community, such as perhaps Social Security Administration services or benefits with the Supplemental Security Income or SSI, which is a somewhat critical independent living benefit for folks in order for them to live. We know that they're going to be severely disabled, and it's probably going to impact their ability to work full time and to live independently. And that benefits from the other agencies could be helpful to help them provide that little bit of support while they try to explore the world of work. And so that process can take quite a bit of time. It depends on the situation. It depends on what the disability is. Not everybody qualifies who applies, but those benefits impact our benefits and our services. For example, our eligibility requirements are somewhat expedited when folks have an SSI benefits already. So we can assume that they have a disability, that it impacts their ability to work, because that's the eligibility requirements for SSI. So we just need to get documentation of that, and that we can usually process their eligibility certificates pretty quickly once we know that. The other aspect to that is when we're looking at benefits for cost services. We have a variety of no-cost services or in-house services, such as counseling and guidance from your transition counselor, but we also often need additional services that have an out-of-pocket expense, such as supported employment or job coaching. And so when in Virginia, in our agency, we've taken it upon ourselves to require that folks demonstrate that they need support from us in order to help with their financial participation. Our assumption is that every client participates financially in their services, unless they are exempt or they demonstrate that they have benefits from other agencies that would also be considered an exemption. So if you have SSI, we automatically will cover your cost services, such as job coaching, and those services can be very expensive. Sometimes people get caught up in the young folks living with their parents and having a household income being considered as part of their income, and that can hurt them sometimes, because now all of a sudden, a middle class income, two income families with one child, it's puts them over the limit that we have set based on the poverty line. And so unfortunately they have to pay for the job coaching hours unless we can change their financial situation along the way. So it's important that the IEP teams meet, they talk about what services are, that they explain what they are, what the requirements are for the eligibility, and why they need them. Sometimes folks will come to our agency and they don't know why they were referred, but they're here. Sometimes people will not truly understand what SSI is, what Social Security is. There's a lot of stigmas around that, and I can understand why folks would want to perhaps try to do it on their own. But it's something that we've experienced in a lot of different ways. But so that wraps up my presentation. Thank you very much.